Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video for today. It's the actual third video of the day, so you guys are getting spoiled. On a Tuesday, we already touched on PayPal and SoFi. Now, breaking news, SoFi did just file a $1.5 billion stock offerings after hours. Stock is down 5 to 6%, basically erasing all of the gains of the earnings report. Pretty interesting. We'll discuss all of that tomorrow morning during the live stream, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the future live stream. But in this video, let's focus on Novo Nordisk, because Novo Nordisk was down 21.8%, meaning that currently we are experiencing one hell of a drawdown worth actually closer to 66%, which is, I think, one of their worst drawdowns ever. Yes, I do believe it is. So let's discuss everything you need to know about Novo Nordisk. Is it cheap enough to buy? Should you wait? Should you just ignore it and invest in something else? We'll answer or try to answer all of these questions in this video. If you enjoy this type of videos, hit all the buttons. If you want to support me even further, do check out the link down in the description and in the pinned comment with the top 10 best stocks to buy now, or go to fool.com/couchinvestor. Thank you very much. All right, first of all, let me show you the huge obesity drug market and the opportunity in front of us. Yes, it's true that since 2020, 2021, this market has already 15x or so. Yes, that's true. But if we look at where we are right now, let's say 2025, we're at $20 billion. It's still expected to grow all the way to $80 billion over the next 5 years. So basically a 4x from here, which gives Novo Nordisk enough time to get their business together. Literally, it gives them enough time to make sure that, well, one, the new CEO, incoming CEO, which has been at Novo Nordisk for 33 years, I'll show you his LinkedIn resume, has enough time to make sure that the business is reorganized, make sure that, well, the market that they're playing in, that they're highly competitive, and that they're not forgetting to renew patents like they did in Canada, for example. So this is just to show you that despite the huge growth over the last couple of years, there still is quite a lot of growth and even more growth in the future, right? Because going from 20 billion to 80 billion is much bigger than going from, let's call it 1 billion to 20 billion. I hope that's clear. And so move number one of the day was the announcement of a new CEO. Now, surprisingly enough, they did not go and pick someone outside of Novo Nordisk. No, they went on and picked here Maziar Mike Dustar. Now, what's interesting with him is that, as you can see, he's been at Novo Nordisk for 33 years. Okay, if we scroll all the way down here, he started back in 1992 as an office clerk, reception, then finance assistant, then finance manager, IT manager, etc., etc. So basically, he knows the company inside out. It's a bit like the Nike CEO, right? Who's been at Nike for God knows how long. So this year, right now, this is the new CEO for Novo Nordisk, 33 years and 2 months experience at the company. Previously, before he became CEO, he was executive vice president international operations at Novo Nordisk. Now, before looking at the second reason, looking at someone inside of the organization, the foundation obviously shows that way, makes sense, because that means that he does not really need an adaptation period, right? He knows the company inside out. If you were to pick someone outside of Novo Nordisk, you would say that he will probably need a couple of months, maybe a quarter or two, to find out exactly the ins and outs of the company, what works, what doesn't work, what needs to change, what doesn't need to change. If you're taking someone that has been at the company for 33 years, if you take someone that already had quite an important role at the company, you would think that changes can be made and will be made quite swiftly. Now, as you will see, guidance for a new incoming CEO, surprisingly enough, has been lowered. Now, has it been lowered purely because the business sucks and it's weak and they cannot compete? Or has it been lowered because it will just make the incoming CEO's life easier? I think it's a mix of both. I don't think you can say, oh, it's this or that. I think it's just a mix of both. So Novo Nordisk lower sales and operating profit outlook for 2025. For the first 6 months of 2025, sales grew 18% on a constant exchange rate. In the second quarter, that also increased 18%. Operating profit growth EBIT, also constant exchange rate, 40% for the second quarter and 29% for the first 6 months. So first 6 months, second quarter, still okay. The problem lies, well, in the outlook for 2025. So they've updated their full year outlook for 2025 with sales growth now expected to be just 8 to 14%, basically 11% at the midpoint instead of 13 to 21%, which basically is 17% growth at the midpoint. That's quite a big difference, right? When you are expected to grow 17% and now you're only growing 11%, you can understand why the stock is down. And you can say that, oh, yesterday actually Novo Nordisk was expensive, right? You cannot say that, oh, it was cheap yesterday. No. Now that we know this, then yes, yesterday maybe Novo Nordisk wasn't as cheap as previously thought, and maybe for some it might actually be expensive. Today, story is a bit different, of course, with the huge crash. Operating profit growth expected to be 13% growth at the midpoint instead of 19.5%. So here as well, a big difference. The lowered sales outlook for 2025 is driven by lower growth expectations for the second half of 2025. This is related to lower growth expectations for Wegovy in the US obesity market, lower growth expectations for Ozempic in the US GLP-1 diabetes market, as well as lower than expected penetration for Wegovy in select IO markets. Despite the expiry, and this is an important part by the way, despite the expiry of the FDA grace period for mass compounding on 22nd May 2025, Novo Nordisk market research shows that unsafe and unlawful mass compounding has continued. This is basically Hims. And that multiple entities continue to market and sell compounded GLP-1s under the false guise of personalization. Novo Nordisk is pursuing multiple strategies, including litigation, to protect patients from knockoff semaglutide drugs. Novo Nordisk is deeply concerned that without aggressive intervention by federal and state regulators and law enforcement, patients will continue to be exposed to significant risk posed by knockoff semaglutide drugs made with illicit or inauthentic foreign active pharmaceutical ingredients. Talking again about that China story that they've talked about when they basically stopped their partnership and agreement with Hims and hers. Now you might say, oh, this is them being scared and they can't compete, etc., etc. On the one side, maybe, but on the other side, this is exactly what you want to see from them, right? You want them to do everything possible to protect their own IP, right? Previously, if this didn't happen, then what's the point, right? What's the point? If you're not willing to protect what's your own, plus you have a duty, a fiduciary duty to do so, then why should investor even consider investing in Novo Nordisk? This might seem as an aggressive move, but I think this is a move that they have to make. Now, this is of course not the only thing that they will have to do. They will probably have to lower prices, be more and more competitive, especially in the United States. And then if you lower prices, of course, that hurts margin. And so you'll get another margin profile, which means that you should not be trading at your historical PE or price to sales or whatnot, but these are things that we will see what happens in the future. They shared some other things here. For Ozempic, the updated outlook is negatively impacted by competition in the United States. Novo Nordisk continues to invest in commercial activities and label updates towards driving further market penetration of Ozempic, basically saying Eli Lilly is quite a good competitor. Finally, while Wegovy sales are growing at high rates and launches are progressing, the sales outlook reflects lower than expected penetration for Wegovy in select IO markets due to slower market expansion and competition. With around 1 billion people living with obesity globally and only a few million on treatment, the outlook reflects a continued global rollout of Wegovy to more markets. As I've shown you at the start, the opportunity here, the market is still quite big. So the updated expectation for operating profit growth reflects the lower sales growth outlook, partially countered by reduced spending. A negative mid-single-digit operating profit growth impact related to the acquisition of the 3 former Catalent manufacturing sites remains included in the guidance. So, Novo Nordisk expects financial items net for 2025 to amount to a gain of around Danish krones 3 billion. This is mainly driven by expected gains on hedged currencies, primarily the US dollar, partially offset by interest expenses related to funding of the debt-financed Catalent transaction. Finally, the free cash flow is now expected to be 35 to 45 billion Danish krone, reflecting the lower than planned expected sales growth, mainly driven by lower volume growth of GLP-1 based treatments in the United States and related cash flow implications amplified by the US gross to net system. Novo Nordisk's full disclosure of the financial results for the first 6 months of 2025 will be published on August 6th. So on August 6th, you'll get even more information. And 35 Danish kroner, in this case 35 billion Danish kroner, is around $5.4 billion. So this is still a company that generates billions and billions of dollars in free cash flow. The problem here is the same with every other turnaround, right? Is how long the turnaround story will take and how much of an impact will the company have to take in the short term. That's the question here. And that's basically the price that you are paying today. Now, they did have a short call today, and so I went here on fiscal.ai and I asked the question if they actually said anything positive in that call. And so, yes, despite the lower financial outlook, the speakers mentioned several positive aspects for the future of Novo Nordisk. These points primarily revolved around strategic initiatives, market opportunities, and leadership changes aimed at driving future growth. So, one of the positive changes, I guess makes sense that I have to say it, is the new CEO and leadership changes, strategic investments and commercial initiatives, market expansion and growth opportunities. So despite current headwinds, Novo Nordisk emphasized the significant unmet needs in both diabetes and obesity globally. The continued global rollout of Wegovy to more markets and potential for increased penetration in both the US and international markets were highlighted as growth opportunities. Dave Moore mentioned a new Wegovy DTC campaign launching in the second half of the year. So I guess they're still seeing some growth ahead, which makes sense. If they didn't, then I guess what's the point, right? What's the point? And maybe this is something that they have to say. So we'll see. They have to address, of course, the compounding issue. Now, whether it's through litigation or something else remains to be seen. But yeah, for Novo Nordisk, I do think that this was another throwing the kitchen sink type of moment. And right now, it's up to them and the new CEO, the person that has been there for 33 years and 2 months, to actually show the market and show shareholders that, look, we're still Novo Nordisk, we're still a very profitable business. We intend to go back into growth mode. We have solved our issues. It will take time, right? This is, again, not a turnaround story that happens like this over the next couple of weeks, over the next couple of months. It probably will take a couple of quarters. Is it a market beater from here on out? I mean, if you have a 5 to 10 year view, I think this could be the market. Yeah. Will it crush the market? Maybe no. But at one point, these things become too cheap to ignore. Of course, you could have said the same thing before, but before we were basing ourselves on, the previous numbers that the company provided us. Now that those numbers have been reduced, then you have to reduce your expectations as well. You have to reduce your valuations as well. And so currently, yes, I do not hold a position, but it is getting quite interesting. The problem is a lot of companies are quite interesting, and especially in the healthcare space, there is quite a lot of action more recently. But these are all turnaround stories that will take time. And so the most important thing here is that don't rush into these things. That's the bottom line. You don't have to rush into these things because you do have a lot of time. I'll release a video about United Health tomorrow and basically explaining yet again why I am bullish on the long run and why I stick to my plan of not rushing in. I already have a position, but like I said, I wanted to wait until the earnings report and guidance in order to make my next decision. I think the same thing could be said here about Novo Nordisk. So all in all, that's about it. Do share your thoughts down in the comment section below. Like, subscribe, all of that, and I see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.